Hello, this is John with Theology Ed. We are now going to begin part 8 of the iPet Goat 2 Explained series. In this one, we are going to talk about fish. Okay, so first, a little bit of review very quickly. We have in iPet Goat 2 the Mark of the Beast ritual going on, right? So we see at the beginning, well, here's Crowley's Mark of the Beast symbol. This looks just like a penis, right? Male genitalia. We have at the outset, we start to see this sort of symbolism. We get the 666 explicitly on the goat head. We have we go to the chalkboard and we have the symbolism again, where you have the solar principle and the lunar, the sun and the moon being joined in a union by way of the sperm, which is graphically the mark of the beast is represented in its most simple form as the sun and moon united. We have the mark of the beast symbolism all over this wall, really. In the footnotes in the I forgot the name of the book, but in discussing and looking at in a footnote 2 Crowley's ritual of the mark of the beast, magic ritual, it was suggested it could be RHK, that's Ra-Hoor-Khuit, which is the vengeful side of Horus. The Lord of the system in visible form, could he be the two halves of the brain? We have the split brain here, and it says, I think so. Then 666 is Anahata, and the symbol of Anahata is over here. This is your snowflakes. Okay. In other words, what we're looking at this, the opening scenes from the goats all the way through the goat scene through the wall. We're looking at repeated time after time after time Mark of the Beast symbolism, 666, Mark of the Beast, sun and moon joined together. Even the iPet Goat 2 name in English gematria is 666. It's throughout the whole thing, and it's very deliberate and very clear when we get the context. Now, we see, okay, so here's the Mark of the Beast, the Vel Reguli, Book 5, Liber V5, I guess. So Book 5, and we have the footnote there, RHK, the call, crying out to Nuith and Hadith and Ra-Hoor-Khuit. Okay, the first three, that's Nuith, of course, is the Scarlet Woman, Hadith is the beast, and Ra-Hoor-Khuit is the ruler of the new age, the Age of Horus. And when we look at the explanation of what was going on and why they're summoning him, why they want him to come and bring in the Age of Horus, and what is the Eon of Horus, and what exactly does he need to do? What's all this war and violence about? In the video, we read, according to Egyptian mythology, the birth of Horus required the death of Osiris. Thus, Crowley claimed the Eon of Horus abrogated, he claimed that they abrogated the rituals of Osiris, by which is meant the interpretation of Jesus' sacrifice as sorrowful, promoting concepts of self-sacrificial martyrdom, life through physical death, also in other places, resurrection, this whole idea of the way of religion during the era of Osiris, institutions, beliefs, things like this. And it continues, a spiritual message had been distorted into blackness in the Eon of Osiris. Its time was up. The sun child, Horus here, would triumph. Aiwas's message, Aiwas was the demon or the angel that gave Crowley his visions, okay? Spoke to him in 1904, I believe. Aiwas's message challenged civilization at its most fundamental level. Until we get the message, asserted Aiwas, there will be war, the burning side of the life-giving sun, nature unbalanced. In other words, as long as Christianity is still around, there's going to be war. Not because of the Christianity, but because the Eon of Horus needs to eliminate it. Horus is going to be the burning side of Horus is going to appear. The god of war character of him, of Horus, is going to appear and wipe out Christianity, try to. Now, this is not just about the Eon of Horus and the Eon of Osiris. These parallel very closely, if you think about them and look at the time, the Age of Pisces and the Age of Aquarius. The Age of Pisces is about 2,000. These ages are astrological ages, about 2,000 years, a little over. And so we're at the transition point, roughly. People debate over where exactly that is, when exactly that will happen. but we're roughly at the transition point, just like the Eon of Horus supposedly began in 1904, but not fully. They're still trying to bring it in and complete it, right, eliminating Osiris. The Age of Osiris, Eon of Osiris, corresponds to the Eon of Pisces, or the Age of Pisces. The Age of Pisces, as well, is associated with Christianity because of the 2,000-year period of Christianity. The Eon of Osiris is the Eon that's marked by the resurrection religions and things. So there's this parallel that is not unnoticed. So I'm going to look here. This is Aleister Crowley and Western esotericism. Esotericism? I don't. It's funny. I read these things all the time, and I don't actually say them until I get on the video. So, esotericism. I'll say it like that. All right. So let's keep going. The New Age was commonly also defined in astrological terms, with the Age of Pisces said to be supplanted by the Age of Aquarius. The consequent evolutionary leap in the development of humankind was often portrayed as heralding a fundamental change in the understanding of the relationship between human beings and the universe. Such thought culminated in the blossoming of the New Age movement in the 60s and early 70s, with its characterization of the Age of Aquarius as the embodiment of holistic principles, in contrast to the dualism that it was suggested defined the Age of Pisces. The dualism of the preceding age was held to be responsible for the strife and conflict between patriarchal religious systems such as Christianity and Islam, whereas the New Age would be marked by peace and harmony. While exponents of the Aquarian New Age seem to have viewed the transition between ages as generally harmonious, think of the hippies and so on from the 60s and 70s and that New Age movement at that time, they viewed it as a gradual transition that was harmonious, with the conflict of duality slowly replaced by the peace of unity. The birth of the new Eon of Horus was described in very different terms. The Book of the Law describes the transition from the old Eon to the new as being marked by war and destruction. Crowley outlines this, and here I'm going to read what Crowley says about this transition. There is a magical operation of maximum importance, the initiation of a new Eon. When it becomes necessary to utter a word, the whole planet must be bathed in blood. Before man is ready to accept the law of Thelema, the great war must be fought. This bloody sacrifice is the critical point of the world ceremony of the proclamation of Horus, the crowned and conquering child as Lord of the Eon. This whole matter is prophesied in the Book of the Law itself, which he got from Iwas or whatever, that demon. Let the student take note and enter the ranks of the host of the sun. So he's proselytizing the student here and telling him, get on Horus's side, because there's going to be a lot of war. Okay, when time comes, this is how it's going to transition to the Eon of Horus, the crowned and conquering child, with this great war, a bloody sacrifice. The planet must be bathed in blood. Right? This is strong war language, right? You're not going to get much more extreme. This is a world war he's talking about. And by the end of his life, he had seen it was near the World War II. He had seen the atomic bomb, and he believed that this applied to the atomic bomb. But let's keep going. Okay. According to Crowley, the reason for the destructive transition lay in the extreme divergence between the ethos of the Eon of Osiris and that of Horus. Not only did the two Eons rely on fundamentally different magical formulas, that of sacrifice as opposed to that of discovery of the true will, but also, and perhaps most important, the blossoming of the Eon of Horus necessitated freedom from the oppressive religious systems of the old Eon. To Crowley, this meant in particular freedom from the restrictions of Christianity. Okay? By identifying his role of prophet of the new Eon with the reviled beast 666 of the Book of Revelation, Crowley believed, I hope I kept that, that he was seizing a cosmic task as the commander of the forces that would overthrow Christianity. Okay, and here, it is necessary, he said, for the development of freedom itself to have an organization, and every organization must have a highly centralized control. This is especially necessary in time of war, as even the so-called democratic nations have been taught by experience. Now this age is preeminently a time of war, most of all now when it is our work to overthrow the slave gods. Of course, that's a way of referring to Christianity and the religious rule there. Okay. The violent language and symbolism is particularly striking in the 3rd chapter of the Book of the Law. Remember, that's one of their sacred books, his sacred books. And the 3rd book of the Law was the one that speaks in the person of Ra-Hoor-Khuit. He's speaking. Fittingly, this chapter is attributed to the god Ra-Hoor-Khuit, who is described as a god of war and vengeance. Crowley acknowledged the difficulty of interpreting the chapter and admitted that many would find its more radical sentiments repugnant. In spite of this, when commenting upon the 3rd chapter, Crowley stressed the importance of interpreting it literally, and though he tried early on to give it less literal interpretation because it was very violent and warlike. But by the end of his life, he was saying, probably atomic warfare, nuclear warfare. Interesting things about stuff that he said. Well, I'm not going to read all this, but there's an association. Crowley was raised in a what you would say a fundamentalist Christian home, and he was the Plymouth Brethren, and they were dispensationalists and believed in the 7-year tribulation and all of that. Okay, this the eschatology that's so familiar, this understanding of the end times that's so familiar to modern Christianity. And he said, I accepted the theology of the Plymouth Brethren. In fact, I could hardly conceive of the existence of people who might doubt it. I simply went over to Satan's side, and to this hour I cannot tell why. So he does view himself as sort of the one bringing about the opposition that was understood, that the dispensationalists believed would happen in the 7-year tribulation, right? He views himself as the one bringing about the War of Armageddon, basically, to bring in the Age of Horus, Eon of Horus. Okay. So now that we've done that, what the association I'm trying to make here between everything we've seen so far and the IPEC Goat 2 fish here, especially. Okay. Here we have the fish and the evolution, the gradual evolution to enlightened man. Think Pisces, think Age of Osiris, think Age of Christianity as sort of relative to the Age of Aquarius or Age of Horus, enlightenment. So this is like your brute, your antiquated, old, violent way of doing things, right? See, they've got their clubs and spears and guns. You're also seeing a transition from the Age of Pisces, or the Eon of Osiris, into that of Horus, which they believe needs to happen by violence. So it's not probably coincidental that the progression requires this. There's going to be war. We have this depiction from left to right. I think we're looking at the evolution of their, not the evolution, the transition from the Age of Pisces to the Age of Aquarius, or the Age of Osiris to the Age of Horus. And whoever created the video seems to make a tighter connection between Pisces and Osiris and Horus and Aquarius than probably Crowley personally did. But it's not one that's unfamiliar in that community, as I just read, as we saw in that previous section, which is why I read it, to show you that this Age of Pisces, Age of Aquarius associated with Horus and Osiris is not unimportant. It makes sense because right now we're in the transition for both. According to Crowley, we're seeing the Horus Eon begin, and we still need to get, in his mind, we still need to get rid of the Christians and the leftovers from Osiris, and the Age of Aquarius as well. A lot of astrologers and people believe that we're in that transition period. It doesn't happen on a day. It's like over a century. You have this sort of you move into this new age. Okay. So either way, we're looking at that. I think I mentioned in the last video, if I didn't, from right to left, because we read the board from right to left, we're saying destruction and chaos introduced, right? All the way over to the map, which is the targets, which it appears when you go outside the school, is a big water event. And I don't think it's coincidental that in destroying the institutions, it shows us going back to be a fish in water, right? So I think that's just related to the suffering and the destruction, probably having to do with some sort of a water event. Nope, I can't make a promise about that, but that's, I think reading it right to left, we can look at that way, left to right. I think we're seeing their progression, how they view what's going on from Pisces to Aquarius or Osiris to Horus. Now, the fish doesn't only appear here. And I want to mention that this video is sort of inspired by some comments from a commenter, Katie Renae. Really helpful comments, really insightful and sharp. And this next observation, I don't know that I ever would have made, but she did. We have fish, and people have mentioned down in the comments, I really don't understand the fish. And I've theorized that it's has a role as sperm, maybe, because you've entered we've entered the fallopian tomb. We have fallopian tubes. I guess sort of like a fallopian tomb, but they're dying. But anyways, so it comes in, and Ra-Hoor-Khuit enters and blows fire on the egg, the ovum, and that's either a fertilization or a release of the egg, right? And some sort of a connection between him and the egg. Now he's like egg guy coming through, which may actually correspond to the egg head guy in the video. There's different representations of him throughout the video, Ra-Hoor-Khuit, and I'm not positive about the egg head guy. I'm still thinking about it. But Ra-Hoor-Khuit enters, breathes fire on the egg, like the egg is being released. But the egg doesn't actually come down. He enters. He comes in. And he's in the fallopian tube. And then the sperm, what looks like sperm, you have the rock sperm dropping. That's from the rape of the Whore of Babylon. And then you also see from that water where that sperm fell, where the semen fell, the individual sperm hopping into the boat of Anubis. So it's a possible interpretation, and that would make him Eggman, possibly. So when we go back to the egg guy, we can sort of think about him as egg guy. And he may be in. I'm brainstorming aloud here, but you guys can brainstorm with me. I'll get it clear as I think through it. I'm pretty sure I'll get to it. But because what just crossed my mind is he may not be Eggman himself. He may have been what was being developed in Eggman. And when the Eggman's head breaks open, whatever hatched out of him, it may have been him. And that an Eggman represents sort of society and the people. So we sort of bring forth Horus from our own minds and our own ways. We bring him forth. We bring forth Ra-Hoor-Khuit and the destruction and all of this by being naively controlled by them through media and other things. And so we sort of are bringing forth Ra-Hoor-Khuit. We're to blame. Right? We let this happen. It reminds me of the First We Take Manhattan song. You know the way to stop me, but you don't have the discipline, right? He says in the song, he says, you know how to stop me. You just don't have the discipline to do it. You're going to sit there watching TV, taking your drugs and medicines and getting all stupefied while we bring forth Horus from your own imagination, your own way. Because they view this as, so when you look at the cup cards, it has to do with imagination, right? A lot of stuff comes from the mind. In those cups, the water in the cups. Either way. So back to this. I think Ra-Hoor-Khuit in some way becomes associated with the egg, goes through. Now he's in the fallopian tube after the egg's been released. Then rocks are falling in. That's the sperm, the semen. The sperm, the individual sperm hop up. However, they're not just going to be that. Okay, he's fertilized by what? What brings about Ra-Hoor-Khuit in victory in the Eon of Horus? The death of Christians. What Katie mentioned is that, in Scripture, what does it say? It says that you'll be fishers of men. Christ says this to the apostles. And so the Christian is represented like a fish. It's also associated with the Age of Pisces. So you have fish. The Latin word for that's derived from fish is piscis, which is why I kept calling it piskies accidentally in the past videos. But whatever, it's fish, right? And so we have fish coming in, and the Christians are associated with the Age of Pisces. The Christians are associated with, and the Christians are associated with fish by way of Scripture as well. And here the fish, what's interesting about this is they're like drawn to him, and they're almost committing suicide. They're hopping out of the water where they're safe into the boat of Anubis, that carries the dead, and die. The Christians die. And not only is this isn't just arbitrary. Remember, where are we at? We're in the Whore of Babylon here, right? Look, when he exits that door. He is inside a great big church. Okay? He's in the church. That's where he's fertilized. Okay? When the whore of Babylon, the woman inside the lighthouse structure, is raped, right? It's at that same moment of her rape that the semen is falling from that lighthouse into what? This building, the church. She represents the Whore of Babylon. Biblically, a very powerful case can be made that the Whore of Babylon is the Roman Catholic Church. If you look closely at the woman's face before she backs up, that was released when Ratzinger was Pope Benedict. And I remember when I first saw the video in 2012, before viewers knew that when she'd back up that you'd see a woman, we all thought, they got Ratzinger in there. The face was Ratzinger's face. They just put it in there. It's representing the Catholic Church headed by the Pope, who's a whore. Okay, and it's not a coincidence that the rape of that whore is that same semen that's falling out of that lighthouse appears to land in these fallopian tubes inside the church. The church is representing the Catholic Church, okay, the Whore of Babylon. And so inside there is where the Christians are. They're in churches, okay? And so they're hopping up out of the water directly into the boat of Anubis, basically almost suicidal. It reminds me of the guy who is stranded in the water and jumps in to commit suicide that, the creator of the video said, that's you. That's you. But, committing suicide, this is like a suicidal thing. But, of course, they're not going to be suicidal knowingly, I don't think. Just like the fish don't know that they're committing suicide. They're just falling for the deceptions, okay? And as they take the bait, time after time, they're toast. They're going to die. Okay, they're going to be in the boat of Anubis on their trip to the afterlife. Okay, and so that is what I think's going on with the fish here. Thanks to Katie, her great observation. I think we're seeing progression here from Pisces to Aquarius or Osiris to Horus, with the destruction of Christianity going left to right, right to left. I think we're seeing the destruction of current institutions and man going from his comfortable life back to in the water, possibly, like the guy who's jumping in the water when we leave the classroom. And I think we have another fish that's I'm going to mention, and I think it may be related, but I'm not positive. Here, you see the girl, of course, Lilith. She's the priestess of this whole thing, the witch doing the magic, or whatever, magician. And if you look at her dress right here, you have a fish. Okay, it's got a little mouth, it's got the eye, it's got the body of a fish. Could be a big fish, could be a whale. I'm not sure, but it's a fish. If it's a whale, we might have the remember the scene with the tank. They're in the belly of a whale. It looks like the dead one, upside down with its rib cage. Looks like, what kind of animal would be that big? Has to be something like a whale. I don't know. But anyways, we have a fish here. And it's on the left side of her, swimming that way. Now on the calendar, the left side of her is going to be the past when it gets to her, right? So this is the past to the left. The future is to the right. That's the direction, time's arrow is going this way, if you want to think of it that way. Okay? And we have the fish going to the past. The Age of Pisces is done. It's gone with this eclipse. When the eclipse happens, they're going to accelerate everything and move into their aggressive strategies that push towards the Age of Horus, okay, or the Age of Aquarius. And mentioning the Age of Aquarius, I'll get to that in a sec. Okay, and to the right, immediately after, what do we get? Right under this buck moon, if you go down on our dress, we have here. On our dress, we have another image of something, and I'm sure there's more to it than what I'm seeing. But what I see is something related to that rape of the whore, again, okay? It's a pretty graphic image. It's not a nice one to have to talk about, but here you have a man's foot up to his knee. Here's his leg, and body goes up apparently, so you're about waist high here. Here's a girl. She's facing this way, hand out. She's looks like, depends on the context, right? I mean, it would be just a type of sex normally, or it could be, if it's a violation of her, a demeaning act, okay, viewed as a demeaning act here. And it would not be coincidental that we have the rape of the whore of Babylon. She has represented Babylon. Remember, the Scarlet Woman is the cup of the Queen of Cups. And here we're seeing what probably is being shown as a violation or a rape or a humiliation of the woman in order going forward. And so what we're going to see is this humiliation of the woman going forward. That's the rape of the whore. That is going to be the Catholic Church or the Christian Church being attacked, assaulted, the end of Pisces. And this is what's necessary for that to be accomplished and to move to the Age of Horus in the future, the Eon of Horus. And so what we're looking at is this progression. Again, same progression. And again, it looks like the association is more with the buck moon than directly with the June 21st date. It's like this is a date of transition. Then we get Neptune's retrograde station's retrograde on June 22nd. Appears very important. Then if you look closely, let me go over here. Oh dear. There we go. When we go over to exiting the classroom, there, this we just looked at. We go out, and we're going to see Neptune retrograde here, and then we're going to see the trident and the double, had a trident. But the trident goes to what? Here's the trident, goes around. This can be viewed as a trident if you have the 3, but this is the lunar south node representing the July 5th eclipse. It's a south node eclipse of the moon, lunar eclipse. Now that would make this what? July 4th, 5th that night, right before it, at the beginning part. So that'd be July 4th probably. You have the flag post like a marker saying, "Here's the target." It reminds me of the Economist cover where the 311 and the 511 or whatever are pinned into like targets, or like this is where they're going to attack. This to me looks like an attack point. I'm not going to make any guarantees. Crosses in front of the doomsday clock as this passes, but let's see. It was before that. Here we go about the classroom, and we'll watch it. And here comes the flag. And yeah, passes. Okay. And right here is your point, July 4th. Again, it looks like it's pinpointing that event or that date. I'm not saying that anything exactly is going to happen on that date. Might be ritual, might be an event, might be the beginning event, opening scene of the whole year of lots of events. May not even stand out as much as we're imagining. But whatever, that looks like a starting point right there. And that lines up with what we've seen in all of these other timelines, right? That it always goes to the buck moon. It seems to go to the buck moon. The rape goes to the buck moon, it looks like, on her dress. We watched the moon after the eclipse when the apple rolls over, and when watching the moon, that's when Obama starts sweating. It seems like it's the moon. That's the big issue here. Okay, so either way, that is what I have for now, and I wish you all the best. Like, subscribe, comment, share the video. If you got ways to share it, please do. Take care.